Today, we narrate the story of a wife whose controlling nature was overly burdensome for her husband. Stay tuned for this episode. I always believed that marriage shouldn't be overly difficult, but being married to Joanna proved to be more challenging than I could have anticipated. The endless complaints and criticisms seemed infinite. Everything I attempted was always wrong. Before we got together, I was quite engaged in hobbies, especially active ones like sports, cycling, and playing football. However, these activities gradually faded away because Joanna insisted we couldn't afford them, we didn't have the time, or she had already scheduled different plans for those days. I slowly drifted away from many friends and ceased participating in social events and gatherings. My deep affection for Joanna clouded my judgment for years, until a moment of reflection over some drinks made me realize how much I had sacrificed. Why enter into marriage with someone you consider perfect, only to attempt to change them? For Joanna, even my family and friends were problematic, not refined enough, too prone to drinking, or overly loud and rude for her liking. She appeared to relish in controlling our lives and everything within it. Nothing was ever satisfactory. Earn more, strive harder, compile never-ending lists of tasks. This became her routine. Initially, she was kind, thoughtful, and somewhat flexible. There were minor indications of her demanding nature, but they didn't alarm me much, and I found them somewhat appealing. Joanna Farrington, indeed, Farrington, as she chose to keep her maiden name, was a beautiful woman from a wealthy family. I, Phil Hall, may not be as visually striking and hail from a simpler background, but I've achieved a fair amount in my own right, a decent job and salary, a wide circle of friends, and various hobbies. Life was satisfying, then Joanna came into it, seemingly enhancing it further. Tall, with her long, straight blonde hair, pale complexion, and an elegant English appearance, Joanna attracted attention everywhere. Her blue eyes, constantly observing yet deeply penetrating, revealed her intelligence and her awareness of her impact on men, though she skillfully avoided unwanted attention. I was as astonished as anyone when she initiated contact with me. It was perplexing. She seemed completely out of my league, and I voiced this to her. I'm weary of these wealthy, arrogant types playing games. You appear different, maybe kinder, and I've noticed you often laughing and joking with your friends. I like that, then, she quipped. Next, you'll say I'm a nice guy, which hardly qualifies as a reason for a date. Her laughter was enchanting, and with that smile and eye contact, I found myself completely drawn in. I was so surprised that I found it hard to catch my breath. My heart felt like it could leap from my chest. Despite my doubts and it being relatively early, I began to harbor hope that it might all somehow work out. Joanna was undeniably good company and remarkably attractive. She invested heavily in her appearance, donning designer clothes, employing a personal trainer, visiting spas, and receiving cosmetic procedures. She spared no expense, and it showed, preserving her beauty as she aged. Our relationship progressed smoothly until an incident involving an old family friend and her ex, Richard. I caught Joanna having drinks with him. They seemed quite close, with him holding her hands across the table. I was about to walk away, then thought, forget it, and joined them. Well, this is interesting, I commented. Joanna's eyes widened, and she quickly pulled her hands back. This isn't what it seems, she insisted. I was just telling Richard that we're engaged now, and I can't see him in a romantic way anymore. At that moment, my only concern was their hand-holding and the affectionate glance they shared. Maybe it was merely bad timing, and she hadn't found the right moment to end things with me first. No, I assure you, Richard is just a friend now. I needed to explain things in person too. Make them right. I love you and want to marry you. I turned to Richard. And you, what do you have to say? He didn't seem in any hurry to respond. The self-assured Richard conceded. Joanna is telling the truth. I invited her out, not knowing she was engaged, and I'm glad she respects our friendship enough to explain things directly. I don't intend to disrupt your relationship. His explanation made sense, but there was something about him that annoyed me, and he added, maybe it's best if I leave you two to sort this out. Truly, I wish you both the best. And Phil, you've snagged a once-in-a-lifetime catch. You're incredibly lucky. Joe looked at me. remorseful. I should have mentioned I was meeting him. Are you being sincere, Joe? If this isn't what you want, it's essential we discuss it now. I desire you alone. There's no need for concern. I belong entirely to you. Joe appeared keen on mending their relationship, especially in private moments, and I was willing to go along with it, even if it meant I had to feign a bit more enthusiasm than I felt, in appreciation of her attempts to set things right. With the wedding just a week away, my fortune seemed too good to be true. Only my mother concurred that I was a suitable match for Joe. It wasn't so much the praise itself that disturbed me, but rather Joe's evident delight in receiving it. I longed for some indication that she too felt blessed, or that she regarded me as an ideal partner, yet such affirmation was lacking. Our dialogues became progressively more dominated by her topics. At first, I put this down to the wedding preparations, which were equally taxing for me. My proposal for a simple celebration was quickly rejected. The wedding scope expanded far beyond our original budget and plans, necessitating the perfect attire, location, cake, ring, and even the addition of her distant relatives, ballooning the guest list to almost 270 individuals. I felt sidelined, often receiving instructions but seldom being heard. I questioned whether my absence would even be noticed and pondered her reasons for marrying me. Despite these doubts, I attended, and the ceremony went off without a hitch, including the speeches. Her father's address seemed more like a warning to me about supporting my princess as she anticipated. Her mother offered a smile, though I did not share in it. Joe noticed my displeasure and supported me by making a toast to our family's union through our love. She gave her father a disapproving look as she took her seat, showing me that I was not the only one who felt critiqued. The day ended without further complications. Following a thrilling honeymoon, we began our married life, and 18 months later, our daughter Jade arrived, filling me with awe. Joe experienced postpartum depression and firmly decided against having more children, stating Jade would be our only one. Aware of my desire for a larger family, I refrained from raising the issue, understanding her challenges with motherhood. I assumed as much responsibility as I could to ease her load. When Jade turned 8, Joe was keen to re-enter the workforce. Her father, who had influential connections, secured her a role in fundraising for a charity organization, a position she obtained through Richard Assu, the charity's CEO. After over a year there, I was among the partners and relatives invited to a summer event hosted by the charity, themed around the medieval era, complete with games and fundraising activities. The event saw many dressed in period costumes, with knights and ladies being particularly popular choices. Despite Joe's disappointment, I chose not to partake in the festivities. She had acquired a Lady of the Manor costume, featuring an embroidered tunic, velvet headdress, bowler hat, and silk veil. The event was filled with various activities, including mock battles with foam weapons and electronic sensors, lob duels over water, and archery competitions. Richard won the mock sword fighting event. Only a few were skilled enough to participate in the horseback events, wielding cumbersome foam lances, yet they managed to hit the electronic sensors on shields and even dismount a competitor, who seemed poised to fall anyway. The event was both amusing and enjoyable. Then, in full view of all, Richard came to Joe, asking for a token of her favor. She attached her veil to his lance, which was met with applause. Flirtation followed, right in front of me. Annoyed by Joe's overt interactions with her boss, I confronted her. "What's going on?" she laughed. "I'm not sure. The young knight has captured my favor. This isn't funny, Joe. Come now, Phil, won't you protect your lady from this charming rogue? I shouldn't have to, and you appear anything but in distress. On the contrary, you seem to relish it. We're married, and I thought our commitment was mutual. Calm down. It's all in good fun, really. Your evident mutual disdain is troubling, and it makes me question what else happens at work with that. I left, wrongly assuming she might come after me. I left the venue aimlessly and eventually stumbled upon a tavern called Farmer's Rest, which felt fitting. Sitting at the bar, still disturbed, I reflected on my overreaction, fueled by the presence of Richard Assu, who was always a concern. I pondered over what words to choose when I saw Joe again at our house, yet it proved to be unnecessary. Joe wasn't present. The lack of knowledge regarding her location was unsettling, and my numerous text messages remained without reply. She came back post-midnight, quiet, leading me to decide against questioning her on where she had been. The next morning saw us exchanging minimal pleasantries. That night Joe mentioned the need for a conversation, prompting me to chuckle. "What's the reason for your laughter? It's quite simple," I answered, though Joe ignored my response and went on, "No one, yourself included, dictates my actions. Throughout our collaboration, I've developed a closer bond with Richard." This reply was unexpected. "Were you with him last night?" "Don't lower the tone. We have a past and he's always been partial to me, so you're saying there was intimacy? Quit acting immature," she snapped back. I looked at her, shocked. "You left me alone at the fundraiser." "He was there in your absence." "That's unbelievable. Whether I stayed or not, it would have happened either way." "I disagree, Joe. Getting involved with him seemed destined. After a single dispute, you flee to his bed, then lay the blame on me, suggesting I'm the cause for your disloyalty." "I've been loyal. Then what's the issue? Is it love? You're leaving me for him." "No, that's not it. I love you." "Then what is it? A regrettable one-time error? It means nothing? Your love is solely for me? It was just for one evening? What excuse are you crafting?" "There's no need for pretense. It was an error. We fought, and I felt wounded. I ask for your forgiveness." "No, it's not fine. And you've entangled yourself in this situation just to justify your actions. Why mention this now?" "I wanted honesty to see if amends were possible. It seems more like you wish to gloat." "You're right. We need to sort things out, beginning with parting ways. You can't seek a divorce. You lack evidence of infidelity. No video, audio, or photographic proof. What leads you to believe I require them? Here, if couples choose to separate, they can simply pursue a divorce, even online, without a lawyer. Proof of who was with whom is not pertinent. I'm unsure if private detectives are relevant here. Plus, this country doesn't entertain claims for alienating affection, thankfully. Otherwise, you're cherished. Non-profit might face risks. And what of the animals? Or Richard and his significant earnings? We won't divorce over this. Don't entertain the thought. If you wish to see Jade again, our family's wealth can influence the outcome. The idea of divorce filled me with fear, securing shared custody, but being left destitute, relegated to a basic shelter. My understanding of legal advocacy was limited. Before long, her father's firm had scheduled a legal meeting for us. These days, decisions are majorly swayed by advisors or attorneys, or both, diminishing the prevalence of autonomous thought. Moreover, why should I be the one to leave? You were the one who strayed. It wasn't about love, and I need space to ascertain my wishes. Discover myself? Precisely. I assumed the problem was Richard catching you in a vulnerable state. This method is futile, Mr. Hall. Dr. Taylor displayed a rare look of disapproval. During a pause in our talk, Joe chimed in, "That's irrelevant. I want you, though I'm unsure we can recover from this. I'm distressed by the thought of spending years making amends. Have you apologized?" "I've uttered sorry, yet it's never seemed genuine to you. Mature a bit." "I've apologized. Now we must look ahead." I detect no remorse or realization of the consequences. You're oblivious to everything except your own needs. If you do feel guilt, it's only because you didn't live up to your own expectations. For your betrayal, my feelings mean nothing to you. You set terms for us remaining together. You opt to play the victim because I hurt your pride. Maybe that's accurate. Indeed, your betrayal hurt me, not just my pride, but more profoundly. I can't stand the thought that the person who's supposed to love me the most actually doesn't care sufficiently. For goodness sake, it was just one incident, a single night, insignificant. I was upset with you, so you deserted us over something minor. That's far worse, and I can't be sure it was the only time. You could have been seeing him for months. How can you assert that? Without trust, we're finished, and it might as well end here. In fact, your suggestion is quite brilliant, marking the first reasonable comment you've made. Why can't you approach this with seriousness? Rising from my seat, I made my exit. What are you doing? Don't even think about leaving me. It all boils down to dominance with you, doesn't it? Well, you don't have dominion over me. I possess the freedom to exit this space, and likewise the freedom to leave you behind. Philosophy? You better not forsake philosophy. After skipping my subsequent appointment, I anticipated a call from Dr. Taylor. Mr. Hall, I'm just touching base about our appointment today. I won't be making it, Dr. Taylor. That was my expectation, Mr. Hall. Phil, just between us, what your partner's personality bears some warning signs you should be wary of. Are you hinting at something beyond deceit? She exhibits narcissistic tendencies and will not forgive what she deems your errors. Every effort you make will appear flawed. Beware of the risk of alienating your child. It's a serious concern. The conversation ended abruptly. Reading on, I encountered disturbing revelations. The described traits unmistakably matched Joe's exaggerated self-worth and arrogance, lack of empathy, a demand for admiration, constantly finding fault in others, and a rejection of critique all struck a chord with me. For the initial time, I faced the tangible threat of completely losing Jade. Parental alienation refers to emotionally swaying a child against one parent, risking Jade growing distant from me, a scenario I couldn't stand. The lasting damage to a child and insights from specific cases are deeply distressing. In terms of legal and financial repercussions, I was at no loss. Contemplating separation and vengeance appeared impractical upon calm consideration. I am neither a former military person nor a tech wizard, nor do I have contacts in the criminal world. I am merely an ordinary individual, now exposed to the mercy of legal proceedings and institutional decisions. How could I avoid losing it all? Then an idea dawned on me, not quite an epiphany, but a vague idea that living alongside Joe and sharing parenting duties for Jade could be viable. She's almost 10, meaning I need roughly another 6 years. My feelings towards Joe are secondary loyalty. To her no longer feels obligatory, so this might resemble a sensible compromise. Financially, this would surely be advantageous. By keeping a cordial relationship for a few years, I could dodge the risk of losing Jade. Heeding Dr. Taylor's warning, I became worried about the fallout from my potential absence. Joe implored for another chance to make amends, but I refused unless she promised to stop interfering with my access to Jade. After moving to my mother's house, she still didn't concede, yet assured that seeing Jade wouldn't be problematic. Thus, with hesitations, I ventured back to our old home. Let's resolve this, I proposed. Honestly, I've always desired something beyond, and had it not been Richard, it would have been someone else eventually. Then why wed me, I inquired. Her response was straightforward. Because I adore you, idiot. You've brought me joy, security, and contentment. I gel with people easily, am lively, and love being the center of attention. I need you, but I also crave more. And that more includes Richard? Not exactly. He's satisfactory in that aspect, but I can part ways with him if he's the problem. I know you don't like him. He's arriving in under 30 minutes. He's always had a thing for me. Incredible. You've truly revealed your nature, utterly ruthless. Maybe you and he are suited for each other. This isn't necessarily our demise. Look at me. You won't find anyone better than me, and I'll satisfy all your needs. But are you insinuating you wish to be with other men? No need for such directness. My conversation with Richard shed light on what I was missing. I sought to be more transparent with you, yet I was afraid of losing you. This doesn't need to be a common occurrence, and I assure you I'll keep it low-key. Silence enveloped us for an extended time. Pondering the effects of splitting up made me second-guess my decision. I might come back, on the condition that we try an open relationship, I proposed. Joe was initially shocked by my suggestion, yet quickly, a smile emerged on her face. Okay, sweetheart, if you desire, I can be your adventurous partner. You have the option to watch, or I can divulge the specifics to you. Maybe that will aid in your understanding. That's not exactly what I envisioned. I prefer not to hear about your adventures. My interest lies in experimenting with other couples. Why would you desire that when I'm here? Maybe it's my innate sense of equity, or perhaps it's to give you the excitement you seem to crave. She looked down at her figure, subtly opening her legs beneath her tight skirt. But honey, I don't wish to share you. You don't need anyone else but me. I knew I had to tap into her longing to be cherished. Imagine the array of men who would be drawn to you. They'd jump at the chance to be with someone as breathtaking as you. You'd be the center of attention, commanding their every move. This notion appealed to her even more than her desire to control me, prompting me to push forward with my final attempt to keep us together. This approach was the only way to maintain our bond, along with several other conditions. You must get tested for STDs before we engage intimately. Again, and we must insist on protection for any encounters. No activities without both of our agreement, and we will join a website to find like-minded individuals. Moreover, you have to end things with Richard and cut off all contact with him. You're right, I've had enough of him. Joe dismissed my strategy, at one point accusing me of plotting infidelity. I suppressed a chuckle, knowing she simply didn't see the ironic humor of the situation, and questioned whether she had quit her job yet. This is non-negotiable, Joe. It's this or I'm leaving. Joe agreed, albeit reluctantly, sensing my resolve, but clearly thinking she'd maneuver around the stipulations eventually. She also resigned, mentioning that her father had arranged another position for her and vowed to sever ties with Richard. I didn't fully trust her word, yet it was a concession I hadn't expected much resistance against. I signed us up on several platforms for couples, astonished by the volume of responses. A photo of Joe in a formal attire attracted wider attention across all age groups than images of her in less attire or from other profiles. We began communicating with multiple couples online. Our first face-to-face meeting was with Dave and Gail. The interaction was agreeable. They were slightly younger than us, in shape and attractive. Dave paid considerable attention to Joe, whereas I found Gail less appealing, and we wrapped up the night seeing it as an engaging experience, much to Joe's disappointment. At one point, we exchanged quick kisses. Joe was excited when I kissed Gail, though her kiss with Dave was longer and seemed more intense. After that, I selected couples based on the wife's attractiveness. I was less concerned about Joe's choices. Truthfully, many were on par with their partners, albeit not consistently. At times we met with other couples, not always for intimate reasons. Generally, the men were amiable and their wives were quite attractive, ages ranging between 20 to 40, presenting a variety of appearances and personalities. I particularly enjoyed the social element, and Joe's loyalty became a non-issue for me as she thrived on the attention from other men. This routine continued occasionally for a few years. In our day-to-day life, Joe became slightly more pleasant, and her complaints diminished. She knew I would leave if she reverted to her old ways, maintaining a delicate truce between us. My time increasingly involved Jade, who had her own share of disagreements with her mother during her adolescence, while I discreetly strengthened our bond. This became increasingly precious to me, fully aware of its fragility. Remaining together was undeniably more economical. Splitting would mean facing difficulties in affording my own space, plus bearing the entirety of domestic responsibilities. Moreover, I had experiences with numerous attractive women, opportunities that would have been unlikely if I were single. While I would have preferred loyalty and a monogamous relationship, this seemed to be the best course given the circumstances. My affection for Joe had waned, but our relationship maintained a level of stability, though I began to yearn for a meaningful connection with someone special. Joe no longer fulfilled that role for me. Jade was now 13, and I simply had to endure a few more years. Subsequently, I engaged in conversation with a couple in their 30s, Megan and Ian. The dialogue was relaxed and friendly, leading to an exchange of several photographs of us in our attire. The duo was enthralling. Megan, with her curly red hair, was elegant and exceptionally beautiful, while Ian looked robust and healthy. Ian was outgoing and animated, whereas Megan seemed more serene, perhaps slightly introverted. We agreed to gather at a restaurant to see how things would unfold. Joe got ready by choosing a form-fitting black dress that accentuated her physique. The selection of her outfit surprised me somewhat, considering it somewhat bold. She insisted her goal was to present herself respectfully, necessitating high heels due to Ian's stature. Upon entering an upscale bar, we located them in a quiet corner booth. exchanging pleasantries as if we were old friends and shared hugs. Ian's attire matched well with my jeans and shirt ensemble. Meeting Megan face to face was stunning. The computer hadn't done justice to her beauty. She donned a midnight blue dress that shimmered in the lamplight, tastefully cut with medium-heeled footwear. Her red hair, now highlighted, was arranged in curls and pins yet looked effortlessly natural. Perhaps Joe had a point regarding the dress code. Our meeting was filled with smiles and mutual excitement about finally gathering. We casually discussed how we discovered the venue. After ordering wine, I made an effort not to overtly gaze at Megan, while Ian looked at Joe with less restraint. The conversation flowed smoothly, with everyone acknowledging their anticipation for the meeting throughout the week. It was surprising how naturally we got along. It felt more relaxed than I had expected. "It seems like we've known each other for a long time," I commented. The others agreed with my observation. Joe's interest in Ian was evident. She appeared captivated by him and soon began flirting overtly. Megan bit her lip, a gesture of her nervousness, yet it drew attention to her full lips. A dance floor situated between the bar and dining area played music, and I asked Megan if she'd like to dance. After looking to Ian for approval, who nodded, he stood and offered his hand to Joe, who accepted with a smile, not looking my way. I vividly remember the moment Megan took my hand, and as our eyes met, I felt a flutter in my heart and elsewhere. I wrapped my arm around her waist securely. "Everything's fine," Megan I reassured. She simply smiled and nodded as we began our slow dance. To ease her tension, I kept the conversation light. "I really like your dress. It's quite elegant," I complimented. "Thank you," she replied. "I was hoping you'd think so. Choosing it took forever. I was aiming for elegance, not vulgarity." "Well, you've definitely achieved it. You look both elegant and stylish," I remarked. Megan revealed this was their first time engaging in such a situation. A reunion with old college friends, accompanied by substantial drinking, led to playful flirting, but it didn't go further. Ian was keen on exploring new experiences and encouraged Megan to open up to the idea. I felt there was more to their story, but decided not to probe too deeply right away. "Would it be all right if I held you a bit closer?" Megan, I asked. "No, that's fine, and please, call me Meg. That's what friends call me," she replied. "All right, how about you place your hands on my shoulders?" Upon doing so, I gently moved my hands along her slim waist. "How does this feel?" I inquired. "It's nice. I enjoy your company," she confessed. I bit my lip. "Just relax, Meg. I won't make you uncomfortable. Tell me if I do, and we'll address it." "Thanks, that means a lot. I want to trust you, and this feels like a great beginning to something potentially special," she shared. I hugged her, momentarily losing myself and forgetting about Joe and Ian, fully immersed in the moment. I felt an urge to kiss her, but held back, sensing it was premature and something to look forward to with anticipation. Our attention was drawn to Ian and Joe, who were also in an embrace, their arms positioned slightly lower. Surprisingly, I felt indifferent, a notable shift from my initial reaction to her past infidelity. Despite the possibility of reconciliation, her attitude made it seem unlikely. Meg looked up at me, questioning. "How do you feel seeing them like that?" she asked. Against my anticipations of jealousy, I was taken aback by its absence. "It might be because you are in my arms," I voiced. Meg's grin was a reply, labeling me adorably sweet, underscoring my primary worry for the duration of the week. My fondness for her was unmistakable, yet the threat of envy could have been an obstacle which, to my relief, never arose. Our outing felt like a normal date, yet with an extra touch of excitement, surpassing just plain eagerness for me. "Being together alleviates any apprehensions," I declared, pulling her in to savor her closeness. Gently, my palms found their way to the lower region of her back, carefully steering clear of any unwelcome touch, as her nearness accelerated my heartbeat, and we moved as if in a dance. Ian and Joe came over, checking on our state. "Definitely, you two are a perfect pair," I admitted. A feeling of pride washing over me as they recognized us as a pair. Meg agreed. "I fully concur," she stated. As Ian and Joe went back to their dance, we moved back to our spot, inclining towards each other to talk over the sound. our space between us shrinking naturally. She moved closer, delivering a soft kiss on my lips. The tenderness of her lips and her scent were captivating. This is truly remarkable. Thanks. And, indeed, there's no rush. We will proceed at the pace we choose, regardless of others, I reassured her. Our attention then shifted back to Joe and Ian, observing their glance. Meg's face turned red as she hid it against my chest upon noticing their gaze. Looks like they've seen us, I observed. Indeed, we're a bit late. Does that bother you? Meg asked. Not at all, and I plan to keep holding on to you, I replied. Ian and Joe came back to us, and our discussion covered friends, family journeys, and jobs, confirming our mutual interests and bond. Ian proposed, what about a nightcap with us? Or it can wait for another occasion if it feels too soon. Joe was visibly thrilled. Meg, nibbling her lip hesitantly, suggested, let's go back and take it as it comes, without any commitments. Agreed. Anyone can opt out at any moment, Joe remarked, with a laugh. How about swapping partners for the ride too? Make sure no one gets lost, Ian suggested. Sounds like a good idea, I concurred, extending my hand to Meg, who took it as we left the bar, feeling a blend of excitement and apprehension. Joe and Ian, holding hands, followed behind us, catching the waitress's amused look. Holding the car door open for Meg, I admired her poise as her dress subtly exposed her elegantly slim legs in nylon. Looking back, I saw Ian showing affection towards Joe. Inside the car, I leaned in for a kiss, wondering if she would offer her cheek or lips. She reciprocated with a tender kiss on the lips. We started the car and followed Ian's vehicle. How do you feel about tonight? I asked Meg. Truly, it was beyond what I expected, though I'm still cautious, she revealed. I'd like to say there's no reason for worry, yet I acknowledge my own uncertainties. Your charm and company are very appealing, but rest assured, everything is manageable, I assured her. She chuckled softly, thankful for the simplicity I added to her life, amid various doubts. It seems Ian and Joe have found their pace as well, I noted. After a short drive, we arrived, enjoyed some wine at the breakfast bar, and then settled in the living room. I was glad that Meg chose to sit next to me. We chatted for a while, and my eyes often wandered to Meg. She indeed had an impressive figure. When I looked back, I noticed Ian's hand on Joe's thigh, leaning in for a kiss. Motivated by this, I leaned in to kiss Meg, and it wasn't long before Ian invited Joe and me to join them for breakfast at 9 a.m., suggesting not just an overnight stay, but a sleepover. The thought of spending the night with Meg filled me with happiness. Meg nodded in agreement. I found myself repeatedly kissing her, unable to stop, until she began to show considerable nervousness. You're certainly a nice person, but I'm not sure if I'm ready for this, she confessed. It's okay, Meg. You must be entirely at ease with our decisions and convinced that this is truly your wish, I comforted her. Following those words, the unmistakable sound of the bed creaking from above indicated something to us. Meg took a deep breath, rose, took my hand, and led me upstairs. As we passed one of the bedrooms, sounds of my wife could be heard. Meg guided me into what was clearly the principal bedroom. With practiced ease, she unzipped her dress and let it fall to the floor. Clad in black heels and a blue translucent bra and panties, she looked like a vision, her skin silky and impeccably fair. I made an effort to close my mouth to conceal my staring. Do you like what you see? She inquired teasingly. I don't just like it, you're stunning, I answered. It looks like I've captured your attention, now it's your turn, she observed. Trying to keep calm and collected, I quickly took off my clothes, feeling awkward and rushed. Meg examined me from top to bottom, causing me to flush with embarrassment. Well, that's pretty impressive. I've chosen well, she said with a hint of jest. I was thrilled by her remark and moved closer for another embrace. The shy housewife transformed into a fervent goddess, and my longing for her intensified. Following breakfast, our dialogue was smooth and free from awkwardness. Joe and Ian also appeared to have a good time, and we agreed to meet again in 6 months. My encounters with Ian and Meg continued, treasuring each moment. Joe asked if I had developed feelings for Meg, which I refuted, insisting it was just happenstance. Eventually, Ian declared they would cease meeting with us, feeling that Meg and I had become too intimate. Without objecting, I accepted inwardly that I had indeed fallen for her, wishing I could instantly take Joe's place. However, this was the end of our exchange. 4 months later, Joe unexpectedly said that Ian and Meg had extended an invitation to us for a party organized by a couple they had met online. Although I was wary about the event and preferred to interact only with other couples, avoiding group events or single participants, my desire to see Meg again persuaded me to go. Joe was curious about the nature of these parties and the new experiences they might provide. Upon arrival, the spacious and secluded venue of the party was a pleasant surprise with a relaxed atmosphere that included refreshments and introductions. The hosts introduced us to some of the regular attendees, who were all welcoming, though Ian and Megan were absent. Joe eventually found companionship with Jeff, a youthful and appealing man she took a liking to, withdrawing to the bar area with him. After mingling with the hosts and another couple, Joe came back, expressing her intention to get to know Jeff better upstairs. Hold on a second, this wasn't in our agreement. Remember, he's single, and we only engage with other couples. I cautioned her, but it's a party. Absolutely not. We're adhering to our guidelines, I insisted. I sensed her disappointment and pondered if she would leave anyway. Then I caught her signaling subtly to her potential companion across the room. By the time Ian and Meg arrived, she had cooled off somewhat. I noticed Meg had chosen a particularly daring outfit for her, both short and low cut. She looked breathtaking, yet clearly she felt out of place. Ian was as sociable as ever, while Meg appeared subdued and uncomfortable, signaling to me that this wouldn't be a festive occasion for me either. Shortly thereafter, Ian led Joe back to the drinks area, leaving Meg and me to ourselves. Our conversation felt strained and lacked the natural flow of our past interactions. "Would you like to go outside for a while? Maybe take a drive with no expectations, just to get some fresh air," I suggested. She seemed enormously relieved and then began to weep. I attempted to comfort her, asking what the matter was. Ian had been pushing her towards a certain type of intimacy with multiple partners, something she didn't desire. Yet, Ian insisted on attending this event. She had consented only because Ian had mentioned my attendance, knowing I would oppose anything that made her uncomfortable. Wait, that didn't make sense. Why would Ian invite me, knowing my stance? I questioned, perplexed. Then, it dawned on us both. Meg suggested that Ian might have had intentions involving Joe. They had been communicating about it through texts. We looked for them but discovered the bar to be deserted. As I glanced at the clock, aware that a significant amount of time had passed, I quickly ascended the stairs. Halfway through the corridor, Joe emerged from a room, adjusting her dress, and we almost collided. The door was slightly open, and peering inside, I spotted Ian and Jeff, with Joe looking guilty. I fixed a disbelieving stare on her. "So this is somehow my fault as well, Joe," I challenged. "This is my life, and I will decide for myself." "You're free to go," she retorted. I whirled around, encountering Meg on the stairs, and headed towards the door. The sound of footsteps on the staircase made me look back, but it was Meg who spoke to me, her face showing distress. "Ken, may I accompany you?" she implored. Looking back at the landing, I noticed another man entering Joe's room. I gave Meg a nod, and we departed together. The drive was tranquil, and we broached the subject of what comes next, concurring that both Ian and Joe were excessively egocentric. To me, Joe always seemed intent on winning, never in pursuit of balance in our interactions. Meg was more direct. "Ian is simply an ass," she declared, eliciting a chuckle from me. It was a criticism I could understand without expert analysis. "Could you drop me at my house? I'm not up for company, but if it's fine for you to be alone, and if you could, take me to my mother's. I'd rather not bump into Ian for a while," she asked. After leaving her with a commitment to stay in contact, I drove home, the silence and darkness striking me. Joe returned the following day, uncertain if she would try to rationalize her actions or show remorse. "Save it, Joe. We're done," I said decisively. "Why? It was only for one night." Remained composed. "We've dealt with many cases before. What makes this one different? I'm at my breaking point. 3 men in one night. You seem to suggest that there's always more to be had, and indeed you were right about that. You were attractive. Many men wanted you and you thrived, she replied, barely hiding her delight. Sorry, I was just mad, because you ruined my fun with Jeff, she added. Absurd, you and Ian masterminded the whole scheme, using Megan to distract me while you both fulfilled your objectives. It's always the same with you, behaving like a spoiled brat, never. Content. You ought to get yourself checked at a clinic. I've resolved never to be close with you again, I declared firmly. Jo did not take my leaving well. She started to follow me and obstructed my visits with Jade. At one point, she tried to storm into my parents' house where I was staying, complaining about how badly I treated her. I endeavored to expel her peacefully. Fortunately, my mother intervened decisively. She slapped her and threw her out, stating, "You need help, Jo." I question your mental health. This remark unleashed another barrage of insults from Jo. I offered Jo money for Jade, but she insisted I go through the child support office. I couldn't help but laugh when they told me I owed her less, and she got so angry that she threatened the manager and was warned by the police. I went to pick up Jade, but Jo said she was out with friends. To my astonishment, Richard walked out from the living room, utterly unfazed. "What in the world?" I exclaimed. "As I said, once you leave me, Richard would show up, and there he is." Jo made it clear he'd lead me upstairs again, he announced unequivocally. Confronting Richard, who exuded a smug air, I felt an urge to best him thoroughly. However, a warning from Dr. Taylor, echoing from the past, halted me. It could all be a trap, a scheme. Jo hated to be bested in any scenario, and if I got arrested for assault, he'd ensure he kept Jade with him, as he did with everything. Could she really go to such lengths? Jo insisted I have every faith that Richard will be a stellar dad to Jade. He's more than eager to step in as her adoptive father. That's when I spotted her phone, slightly hidden on the shelf, unmistakably recording. Overcome by a mix of humor and disbelief, I laughed. "Clever try, Jo, but I'm not touching him. You're truly in a league of your own, a perfect match for one another. And Richard, does he know about your adventures with multiple partners?" Without protection, Richard choked on his response as I made my exit. "You should think about getting tested at a sexual health clinic, pal." Wouldn't want any surprises as Jo relished her night. I was bombarded with vile texts and videos from her. Her messages were quite revealing. "You're missing out on what could have been yours to enjoy." "Doesn't matter, my new man is much more of everything than you were." It struck me as peculiar that she'd bother sending messages if she was as content as she claimed, but my focus remained on Jade's well-being. "Handing over Jade to me means more leisure time for your escapades, though I've heard Richard's since moved on, leaving a vacancy, so to say." She cut off the call, possibly stunned that she'd been rejected twice already. The divorce process was agonizing, dragged out endlessly. She was relentless, inventing numerous outlandish claims of my unfaithfulness and abusive behavior, lacking any evidence. Her accusations were so far-fetched that they began to unravel before the eyes of the family court, social workers, and attorneys. Any opposition from her was met with a volley of harsh words. I gradually understood that the Jo I had known was nothing more than a facade. Even her parents began to worry about their daughter's erratic conduct, though I partly blamed myself for leaving her. Now 14, Jade had no alternative but to stay with me, a decision the family court supported, observing her wishes. I took my role as a parent seriously, never missing any school or extracurricular activity, effectively becoming Jade's personal driver. Jo took the court's decision as a betrayal. She couldn't fathom why I didn't choose her in the custody battle. She was livid when my lawyer suggested a psychological evaluation for Jo to ensure Jade's welfare. Jo was expected to react explosively. Her outbursts became public during a court session where she lost all decorum. She thought us foolish, especially my lawyer, who was merely representing me. Once again, she was found in contempt for continuous attempts to block my access to Jade. I kept a record of our exchanges and maintained a log as proof. The judge warned her that another incident would lead to her arrest. At the last hearing, she lashed out again, this time at the judge after a verdict of joint custody was delivered, resulting in legal repercussions and a fine. Slowly, Jade and I spent more time together. Joe seemed less inclined to be involved in Jade's life or to correct her own behavior, though I didn't witness any of it firsthand. All that was left was to pay off the remaining 18 months of our mortgage, after which the house could be sold, or Joe would have to buy out my share. Furthermore, I was able to accumulate a reasonable sum of money over time, which turned out to be extremely useful. The day subsequent to the divorce becoming official, my doorbell rang. When I opened the door, a red-haired woman was standing there. "Hello, I presume you're not interested in dating a freshly single and transformed woman who seeks nothing but a reliable and uniquely loyal companion," she declared. I answered, "I think we may have someone fitting that description. Should you choose to come in." The truth was, Meg and I kept in touch and provided support to each other throughout our own divorce proceedings. Ian was on a path akin to Joe's, and like Joe, he sometimes asked for forgiveness. Afterward, my encounters with Joe were rare, except for a brief appearance at Jade's 16th birthday party. I harbored the wish that following such a long period of separation, we might engage in meaningful conversation. "I could think about getting back together with you, Phil, if you begged me. You know I'm the best thing that ever happened to you, and don't even try to pretend you don't miss me," she teased. Laughing, I said, "You're right, Joe. It would indeed be pointless to argue." Our next meeting with her was at the train station, saying goodbye to Jade as she left for college. Meg and I were both there. As the train pulled away, I heard Joe say to her, I could take him back if I wanted to, but I prefer other men too much, and he couldn't handle it. With a polite smile, Meg replied, "Oh my, you're really quite sour and completely out of touch. Aren't you?" Meg then turned, grabbed my hand, and we walked away from the scene. During all the celebrations, Jade opted to spend her time with me and Meg, partly because of our attention to my half-brother. In the end, we discovered our own version of happiness. What do you think about stories like these? I personally find them captivating. They are straightforward and enjoyable to follow, even as the narrative takes unexpected turns. Feel free to share your opinions in the comments. Until the next video.